Welcome to Faithful Discourse, where we explore the intersection of faith, leadership, and public life. I'm your host, Chris Henry. Today's guest is someone I've been wanting to talk to for a while, Greg Stowers. Greg is the Chief Administrative Officer for the Indianapolis City County Council, where he serves all 25 councilors, navigating policy, politics, and the daily work of making a city function. But that's just part of what he does. He also leads #LunchBag Indianapolis, an initiative that's provided over 40,000 meals to people experiencing homelessness. He serves on the boards of Indy Hub, the Mitch Daniels Leadership Foundation, Flanner House, and the Indianapolis Indians Charities. He's been recognized as one of IBJ's 40 under 40, selected for the Congressional Black Caucus Institute's Political Leadership Development Program, and he's a proud member of the Stanley K. Lacey Executive Leadership Series. In short, Greg is exactly the kind of leader Indianapolis needs right now. Someone who believes our civic engagement matters. Someone who's building bridges across sectors, public, private, nonprofit. Someone who's not waiting for permission to make a difference. Greg reached out to me after I had the honor of leading the memorial service for Jim Morris, a giant of civic and faith leadership in this city and a mentor to us both. And I thought, this is someone who our listeners need to hear from. Greg Stowers, welcome to Faithful Discourse.
Well, thank you, Pastor, for the invitation to be here. Took some time to listen to some of your previous podcasts, and as you mentioned, Jim, was just really grateful for your remarks during I think it was the egg breakfast, where you gave those remarks. And as a person that just really prioritizes giving people their flowers, it just made sense to slide in your DMs and send you that note. So thank you so much for taking the time to have me here.
Well, so grateful that it worked, and look forward to the conversation. And I want to start here. You've dedicated your life, your skills, your gifts, your experiences to civic engagement, getting people involved in the life of their city, connecting communities to the policies that impact those communities, and empowering and equipping leaders for good and meaningful work. Why does that matter to you, and how does your own story inform the work that you now do?
Yeah, so I am a native son of Indianapolis. So I've been here 38 years, which, 38 years, right? But I am a recipient of the love and work of my family in a very real way. My grandmother, Betty Nixon, was the sort of catalyst for all this for me in a way that I didn't really understand growing up. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that she was just heavily engaged in Indianapolis. She ran a local nonprofit, benefited from work with the Indy Chamber, with a variety of other sources of funding, and was more connected politically than I imagined. So when she passed, there was a box of letters from former elected officials, Birch by Bill Hutnut, with letters to my grandmother, but not just the boilerplate language, actual mentions of her first name, hey, Betty, that kind of thing. Yes. And those were things that I knew growing up, but I did have parents who were not as civically engaged, but just empowered me to take the next steps in my sort of leadership journey and put me in spaces to grow and learn. I had the privilege of growing up in Washington Township. I'm a proud North Central Panther, where at school I learned sort of the socioeconomic differences in people, where there would be mornings I'd be out on Geist Reservoir, and then at night I'd be at an apartment complex house party, something like that. And just seeing that dynamic of people, it was just something natural for me. But as I've gotten older, and particularly in this role now, I'm realizing that there were some gifts that I received early on, just from an experience standpoint, that really helped shape where I am today.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned to me that you're the oldest of 5 children, so I imagine that both leadership and conflict resolution skills were developed early.
All the time, all the time. Certainly grateful for my younger siblings, David, Alex, Wesley, and Gabrielle. It was actually Gabrielle's 25th birthday a couple days ago. I think they've certainly made me a better person, more thoughtful, more engaging, but also living their own lives and trying to make sure that they, have space to feel valued and grow and develop. And in any way that I can do that, I'd certainly try to. But got a lot going on, as you can tell by the bio, too.
You do. You mentioned the example of your grandmother, though that witness came to you perhaps later in life. Was there a moment early in your life, early in your career perhaps, when you realized this is it, this is what I'm supposed to do, this is the place where my giftedness and the needs of the community around me really meet?
I think there are 2. One was really early on. So I grew up in Washington Township schools, Crooked Creek Elementary School. We were, I was in 3rd grade, and we were taking the kind of gifted and talented test. And I, all right, I'll take another test, not a problem. But our teacher, facilitator, told us that we would not be able to have recess that day. And there was a group of about 12 of us, and we had learned about, sort of social movements at a very small scale. But my parents, at that point, I didn't really realize how important it was, but they made me and my siblings watch the Eyes on the Prize videos and during Martin Luther King Day. So I had this thing in my head about like these sit-ins and these social movements, and while this is not a social movement by any means, was a recipient of how that sort of played for me. So as they're telling us about this recess, you're not going to be able to have recess, we kind of convene as 3rd graders. And I don't want to say it was a boycott or a sit-in, but there was a very firm, we got to have recess if you're going to let us take this, if you're going to make us take this test. And we got recess that day. So
Are you the spokesman for the group?
A little bit. But then again, going back to high school, I ran for, I think it was junior class council. And that was a moment for me where sort of the popularity, but also trying to do things for my classmates kind of shined through in a very real way. And then just being able to connect with people in a very real way and represent them was really cool. And I'm sure that there are probably other examples, but just growing up, those were 2 things that, I kind of circle back to as times where leadership and representation were incredibly important for me.
Yeah. I love it. Those we don't always know how those early seeds planted become great fruits. So thanks for sharing that. You've mentioned that you're a lifelong Indianapolis resident and a proud North Central graduate. Tell me a little bit about what you love about this city. We think of it, it is the context for our lives, but sometimes it fades into the background. Yeah. What makes Indianapolis a special place to live and work? For sure.
So for me, it is connection in a real way. While I've grown up here, lived here my entire life, the ability to connect with people, I think, is very rare based on what I hear from my friends in other cities. So, even our connection, they're not, I don't want to speak for people in other cities, but, the ability to see someone give remarks that really hammer home with you, and then to send them a message and then get a follow-up, I recognize how rare that is, and I'm grateful for it. But I think the incredible piece about our city is, one, it's built off hard work and relationships. So one of our mutual mentors, rest in peace to Jim Morris, I was able to meet him through another mentor of mine. And it just shows that, we talk about 6 degrees of separation. It's really 1, right? I think that's one of the really cool pieces about Indianapolis is that, you can make a call or send an email and you're probably going to get a response. Or if you can't get a response, there's somebody else that can help with that. And that impacts, not only careers, but personal lives, things of that nature. The ability to reach out and get a response, I think, is just incredibly cool. And I'm grateful for it. And I've benefited from it throughout my career, throughout my personal life in a very real way.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. It's certainly been my experience, and Jim sort of was that one degree of separation for so many of us.
Definitely.
So on the flip side, and you've talked a little bit about the discrepancies and sort of the challenges in Washington Township, but what do you see as some of the real challenges that the city of Indianapolis faces in this moment?
Yeah, I think for me, particularly in my role, housing is a behemoth, an albatross, a source that is just out there. Thinking about affordable housing, thinking about how we repair housing for long-term residents, thinking about how we stave off gentrification in historically Black and brown neighborhoods. Those are things that are really important. But I also think talent is incredibly important. How are we making jobs attractive? How are we making sure that people feel seen, heard, and valued in their roles? And while that may be somewhat of a new thing, because I grew up in a time where you do what your boss says and you move on. That isn't necessarily the case anymore, and I think employers have to be really thoughtful around how they're engaging and really empowering people that work for them. Not only just younger folks, but also our more seasoned employees and workers, just to ensure that they feel a sense of pride in their work. They feel that they are, like I said, seen, heard, and valued. And as a manager of people, I mean, it is tough work. It is not easy, managing people and trying to balance the idea of being kind and being nice. But I think those are two pieces that are just incredibly important.
Yeah. So as the city county council's chief administrative officer, you serve across a very broad spectrum, not just in terms of the number of people you're serving, but you're serving Democrats, Republicans, and now I think maybe at least one sort of third-party member. In a moment when so many of us feel the strain of this intense polarization, you're serving in a political space, but not in a partisan way. How do you navigate that? What does that look like in your role?
I think it just goes back to the work, right? So as much as I'm working for 25 elected officials who are overworked at times, who may not get the credit for the work that they're doing, but who signed up for this, who signed up for the accountability, who signed up for some of the more vitriolic things that we see, I always pivot back to the work. They're not Democrat potholes. They're not Republican potholes. They're not independent potholes. They're just potholes. And I think that is the thing that continues to drive me. Also, going back to my background, I try to remember, and it's hard some days. It's hard to remember why you started. But as a kid who grew up in this city, to be appointed by the city county council to help support their work, it's not something that's lost on me. And, there are some tough days. I mean, every job, every industry has their moments, but just remembering why I started has been really helpful. And then also just remembering that it's the work. With all the, I don't want to call it noise, because I think people have a right to express their opinion and be thoughtful about it. But with all that, it all centers back to how are we providing a safe and equitable city for our residents.
Do you think in some ways working at the local and municipal level, you almost have to put up a fence around national politics? It used to be the line was all politics are local. Now I think the line is all politics are national. And so you need to know what your city councilor's position is on some national partisan issue that they may never make a single decision related to. So do you find the need to kind of partition off the city council from that kind of impact?
So my daily sort of routine is I wake up, I pray, meditate, steep some green tea, and then I touch grass. So I'm very grounded every morning. And then the next thing I do is read local news. And, I believe in a free press. I think we've got some very thoughtful reporters and columnists out there. But that's where it stops for me. I think the the national scene has become so polarized that it isn't necessarily helpful in terms of what's going on here in the city. And that's not a direct shot at anybody. Again, I'm just focused on the work that we can do here. I think oftentimes we counselors are asked about some of these more national pieces, but there's only so much that a counselor can do. But there's advocacy that counselors can certainly do. But I think it's also trying to navigate the governance, the advocacy, and the politics of their roles. So, certain things that may be happening internationally, it's certainly important for counselors to utilize their voice as they represent, give or take 39,000 people in each different district. But it's also thinking about what can we actually do here? What is the work that actually is going to impact citizens here in Indianapolis? We always go back to potholes, and I wish I could fill them all for everybody. But just thinking about at the local level how the work that we're doing is going to impact residents here in a very real way.
When I asked that question, you had sort of an audible, invisible response.
You saw it.
Could I sort of deduce from that this work of kind of keeping the job, the focus, and effectiveness in the role more important than sort of partisan posturing or even positional posturing about national issues? Is it fair to say that's harder than it was 5 years ago?
I've kind of grown up in it. I had I worked at Ice Miller before this role, and worked with Democrats and Republicans and folks who were who were incredibly thoughtful. And obviously we had clients that we had to work on behalf of. But that moment for me was incredibly helpful as our country was going through the remnants of COVID, the remnants of civil unrest as, related to the murder of George Floyd. It was really helpful in that moment to see folks as people. And I think oftentimes for me, the way that I'm able to navigate some of the political pieces is understanding that these are just people who want to provide for their families. They want to make sure people feel safe. Those things really help drive a lot of the work that I do.
Yes. And I think it's sort of a known but not always practiced reality that relationships are what, and even your first answer about the city connections, but relationships are what ultimately drive effective change. Within the city county council itself, are you able to, in your role, or at least facilitate through your role, those kinds of relationship building exercises that might kind of make more effective results possible?
I think it's sort of the unspoken piece of the role, right? You've got to navigate and help support 25 elected officials, but then you got the community at large too. And you've got the administration, the mayor's office, so executive branch, legislative branch. Then you've got your state house too, state house and federal. So trying to navigate those in a way where we understand the realities of or where we are as a city. I think is incredibly important that we know that. But there's a lot of coalition building, a lot of making calls before things happen, giving folks a heads up of, hey, just want to get your take on this. And that's been really beneficial for me, just kind of keeping a pulse of what's going on in a real way and trying to decipher what is real versus what may not be as real to folks.
And that's certainly true in the sort of vertical silo of government or of public leadership. But you've also, as you've mentioned, worked across sectors. So you haven't done all of your work in the public sphere, nonprofit, private, corporate as well. And when you talk about an issue like housing, that's a perfect example of one that requires the participation of both the vertical in terms of state legislature, not just city council, city county council, but then also that breadth of horizontal participation from the nonprofit, from the philanthropic, from the corporate. Do you see opportunities, and are you sort of facilitating those kinds of connections across different sectors for meaningful change on those issues that really matter?
So I certainly don't want to overstep my role. I work for elected officials, and I think some of my support extends in a variety of different ways. But that's true. I mean, it's got to be. It can't be this siloed approach. You've got to bring voices in. You got to hear people out. and be thoughtful around, the feedback that you may not agree with. This city, again, built off hard work and relationships, and egos do play a role in trying to navigate those. I think in my role, my ego is probably at around a 1 or 2 out of 100 at this point. But I think that's important. It helps me decipher things in a very real way, and again, get back to the actual work as opposed to, allowing my ego to play a role. So, I do always want to mention to folks that while I do work for the council and I've got a really long title, I'm here to support them in a real way, and really a byproduct of that is supporting the city of Indianapolis as a whole.
Yeah. Where do you see potential for collaboration that maybe we're missing right now? I know in the faith community, we're always looking for those partners who can come alongside for the common good. Do you see areas of potential collaboration that maybe we're not making full use of?
I think there are certainly some silos. Again, going back to the previous question, where things have been done one way for so long. I think there's some great folks who are trying to convene in a very real way, whether that be the governance side, the political side, faith side. But again, I think it's just important to get folks in a room, and that may not speak to a more specific thing, but I've seen the benefit of, hey, I've got this issue, and I've got this issue. Bring folks together, facilitate a conversation in a thoughtful way, and find the things that you can agree on, at a very high level. And then you can work down from all the other stuff. But I think sometimes we forget that, again, you can make a phone call in this city as opposed to running on social media. Make a phone call. I've step back a lot of my social media presence. One, because it just, it's become so vitriolic at a national level, and that has trickle down effects at the local level. But being able to pick up the phone, I think is incredibly helpful, and is something that I do on a very consistent basis.
So I want to switch gears from kind of the political and public realm to the way you're practicing your faith outside of that, and I think probably making your grandmother very proud. You lead #LunchBag Indianapolis. I understand it's served 40,000 meals to those experiencing homelessness in our city. That's not policy work. It's packing lunches, meeting people, showing up. Why is that project important to you? And just tell us about how the idea was launched and the impact that it makes.
Yeah, so I, again, millennial on social media in 2014, 2015, trying to figure out, my place in the world in a sense. And, heard about this thing called #LunchBag, kind of researched it a bit. It had actually been brought here beforehand. I just kind of gave it a jump start thanks to some really great friends and partners. And I want to give a huge shout out to my good friend, Lauren Ray, who has been with me since the start. We went out and packed 100 lunches the first time. It was August of 2015. We had no idea. We knew to pack lunches, and then we go out and it's like, well, we just hand out lunches. And that's what we did, and that's what we've done for 10 years. COVID has certainly played a huge role in terms of changing those things. And I think where I sit in my current role, I'm very thoughtful around what that looks like, how you can potentially create dependency model. There's a really good book called Toxic Charity. I forget the author's name.
Bob Lupton. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. That I read actually before the pandemic, and it really shifted the way that I thought about things. But it was also, if you haven't eaten in 3 days, let's provide people some meals. And there are some things that when we talk about talent, I would love to pass this thing off to some younger person and let them run with it. But it has been the constant in my life as, I've changed careers as things have, sort of worked like a jungle gym for me. It's always been the thing that I've pivoted back to. But, looking at a model in 2025 as we think about a growing homeless population and an unhoused population, I think it just takes a level of intention. So on one hand, we provide meals to individuals, but on the other hand, we engage a population of people who may not be that civically engaged, and to talk to them about what food insecurity means, to talk to them about, our crisis as it relates to homelessness. I do hate sorry to use the word hate, the pastor, but the usage of the word crisis. When I think about a crisis, I think you can almost saturate things when you overutilize it. But homelessness and housing are those things where I think certainly fit the bill as it relates to a crisis. But again, giving people context for what things look like, and then also making them feel empowered to engage in a thoughtful way. These are human beings, and I think too often we think about our unhoused and homeless neighbors as other. No, these are active members of society. Some may not. The thought process is they're down on their luck, and we all could be there, but for a lot of folks, they're employed, right? They just don't have the resources and don't make the money that they should to sustain themselves. But being able to give folks a look into that in a very real way, I think has been helpful. We've partnered with a variety of different organizations around our city, 300 plus volunteers at any sort of given time, and it's really pop-up philanthropy. So, we put out the note 2 or 3 weeks in advance, and people show up, and we pack lunches. But again, as we think about what is actually going to move the needle, that may not be the model moving forward. I want to be really thoughtful in terms of how we are trying not to create these models of dependency, but then also providing a level of support for some of our unhoused neighbors.
Yeah. In my experience, it has to be both and, that we have to meet immediate needs and ask the broader questions that you're also describing, whether it is housing or education or sort of workforce development or things like wages and pay level. But I do find that the kind of work that you're describing leading over this decade has one key distinguishing benefit for those who engage in it, and that is listening. You begin to hear stories that break down stereotypes. So the kinds of stereotypes that you are describing being untrue of the majority of the folks that you're serving, I think that's many of us would benefit from some time spent with people whose lives look very different than ours.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a reality of it, right? I mean, you got to navigate things for the advocacy community who want to ensure, and I think everyone wants to ensure a level of dignity. But then you've also got to think about, the business owner who's started from nothing and built up a business and is trying to continue that business, and then looking at the impacts of this crisis on the business model. I think those are things that we've just got to be really thoughtful of. I think we've got a dilemma from a political sense, from a moral sense, and then from a realistic sense. And I think those are things that someone perhaps smarter than me is going to figure out at a certain point. But I think we've got a lot of really thoughtful people in a variety of different spaces that care about this issue, that care about people. But I think we've just got to zero in on what that actually looks like in practice.
Yeah. As someone who serves a congregation on the north side of the city, I think the other realization that comes in time is that pockets of need exist all across our city. And I do think that there can be an assumption, particularly on the part of those who don't travel throughout the city a good bit, that there are specific hotspots of homelessness or of poverty, when the truth is it looks different in different parts of the city, but it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
All the time. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what you think ordinary citizens, so people who don't have the privilege of serving in government or leading nonprofits, what role can church members and people of faith and citizens of Indianapolis play in addressing the kinds of issues that projects like #LunchBag address?
I think it's staying engaged, right? So I think I get a number of younger folks that reach out and like, hey, I want to be on a board. And my response is always, what are the things you care about? And how can you zero in on those things? And again, based on the network, based on previous work experience, based on my work with Indy Hub as their current board chair, there are numerous avenues to get engaged and be involved. And I think I'm overly involved. And certainly, as you mentioned, four nonprofit boards, but they all they all center around work that I really care about. But being able to be a resource to folks who want to get engaged, would break things down for folks like that. Like, find the things you care about. And I'm sure that there are organizations out there that matter. I think we always talk about, voting in elections. I think that is that is the bar in terms of civic engagement. But finding those things, outside of voting, from a civic engagement standpoint, are really important. I know that takes time. I mean, it is a privilege to be able to volunteer. I was a 28-year-old kid, young man, and I had the privilege to volunteer on campaigns, and that is not something that everyone gets the opportunity to do. But if you can, it is played incredible benefits for me, from a standpoint of growth and development. But again, that's just something that not everybody gets the opportunity to do. But for those that can, volunteering is an incredible experience.
Yeah. It's such good advice and such wise advice.
Telling my mom you said I was wise.
You're wise. Someone. So we first met at one of these connecting kinds of events, and particularly geared toward younger leaders in the city of Indianapolis. And I think the charge and the challenge to step into those places of leadership, not just now, but in the years and decades to come. So I think of you as part of this new next generation of leaders who are stepping up in Indianapolis. We see them certainly in government, but also in the nonprofit sector, in the corporate sector. What gives you hope about that generation of leaderships as a part of it? And where do you think your own leadership journey and kind of the generation that you're a part of can take the city from here?
So I think we look at success a little bit differently. Growing up, it was, and this was, pushed by my parents in a very real way. You're going to go to college, you're going to get a job and maintain yourself. And I think that's still the goal. Certainly don't want to push folks to not achieve higher education, but I think the prescriptive idea of success has to change when we think about sort of the homogeneous look at that, right? It is get a degree, go to college, work for 30 years, and then retire. For me, that is not how it's been. It has been a jungle gym. It has been back and forth, and my parents would certainly tell that story for me. But there is this prescriptive idea of what success looks like, and there have been numerous people in my network and around me that have helped me kind of shift that idea. We think about doctors, lawyers, government workers, but what about our folks that work in hospitality who do incredible work for our city, who kept our city going during COVID? How are we highlighting those individuals? I think about educators who I think are salt of the earth, and good friend. I'm going to do a couple shout outs here if that's okay. Jeremy Wiley, who's the principal at Pike High School, doing incredible work, but is so locked in on the work that when we talk about civic engagement, doesn't really have time to engage in a meaningful way from a civic standpoint, but is just so invested in his students, and I see it in the work all the time. So when I think about this next generation of leaders, we've always been taught to network up. So loved having Jim Morris on text, and while there weren't many commas or periods in any of his texts, was certainly appreciative of that. But I've also realized that it's about networking across. There are, like I mentioned, there are just incredible individuals in this city that are doing great work that aren't just emerging leaders, but are leaders now. And I think it's just incumbent upon folks of my age and around my age to realize that it isn't necessarily about reaching up. It's also about reaching down and pulling people back up. And, my work through Indy Hub, my work through the Mitch Daniels Leadership Foundation has really helped play into that in a very real way. And in places where we won't necessarily see the benefits until later, but some incredible young people coming up that I've been able to be helpful for and supportive of.
How about your own path? Where do you see next steps for you, or are you thinking that far at this point?
I'm very consumed with work in a real way, and there are some really thoughtful people who have certain ideas about where things are going to go for me, and I'm grateful for that. But as corny as this sounds, at the end of the day, I would love to wrap up my career as a social studies teacher at North Central High School. There's a guy named Dr. Jay Hill who was incredibly helpful for me growing up. And the idea of being able to impart whatever wisdom, and that'll be years from now, on younger people would certainly be great, but just got to fill in what those next 20 to 30 years look like. And, working in politics, it ebbs and flows in a real way. And it has been something that that I went to school for, that I care about in a real way. But also, beginning to think about, other areas where, a strategic mind, someone who can build connections and build with people, interested in what that looks like. But for now, I think the work of the city of Indianapolis is top of mind for me. But yeah, certainly thoughtful and in terms of what the future holds. It was a very political answer.
I was going to say, I imagine there will be no shortage of people who have ideas for you, and probably already do, which leads me to sort of my last line of inquiry here, which is about that. You talked about your morning routine and beginning with prayer and meditation, and beginning by touching ground and really trying to have yourself be grounded. As opportunities emerge, and even in the day in, day out stress of the work that you do, what is it that keeps you grounded, focused? What are the gifts of faith in your life, or the gifts of inspiration or spiritual core to who you are? Yeah,
so my mother, Kimberly Stowers, is the sort of guiding light for not only me, not only my siblings, but dozens, if not hundreds, of young people around the city of Indianapolis. I got the mix of both of my parents, where there's emotional intelligence and just genuinely speaking, the smartest person I know from an intellectual standpoint with my father. So that is where it all stems from. As I've gotten older, one of the things that I've realized is the work has always been there. And I think, I can't remember the exact scripture, but faith without works is dead. The work has always been there. And for me, as I'm so focused on work, so focused on developing younger people, the idea now for me is, okay, faith plays a role in that. And there's something else here. Again, I didn't mention this earlier, but was baptized at Eastern Star Church when I was younger. And, my walk is like a jungle gym, like many younger people. But as I've gotten older, there have been very specific moments for me where faith has stepped in a real way. And it's not something that I talk about often, but it's something that I'm growing more and more comfortable with. I think there's this idea that you can't really talk about your religion, and for me, that's not it. But it's something that I've just become a lot more comfortable with as I've gotten older. But yeah, going back to the question, I mean, it is my parents that have driven that. I was the kid who was in children's church and was in the children's choir singing terribly. But
been there.
They have grounded me in a very real way, and grateful for the way that the way church and faith has played a role in my life. But again, don't want to sound overly righteous. It is a continuous work that ebbs and flows, but really nailing home the fact that I've done the work and I will continue to do the work, but just ensuring that there's a level of faith involved in that, I think is really important.
I appreciate that. If I were to answer my own question earlier about what's unique about the city of Indianapolis, in my experience, it has been the prominence of the faith community in those places that really matter. And I think the political leaders of our city who you work alongside, I think as a whole, do a very good job of listening to the faith community, and the faith community does a really good job of letting its voice be heard in our city.
I would say so.
I imagine you hear from folks like me regularly in your work.
But it's important. I think the faith community certainly plays a role as the sort of moral backbone of any city. And to negate that, I think, is a missed opportunity when you think about congregations and folks who are involved. That's certainly a population that needs to be continuously engaged and thought of as we're navigating various decisions, as elected officials are navigating various decisions.
Well, and one of my predecessors, Bill Enright, likes to talk about sort of the halo effect of congregations, that yes, there is the Sunday morning worship service and the community that gathers there for inspiration, and that's the steady drumbeat. But if a church disappears, you don't just lose a Sunday morning worship service. You often lose a food pantry and a counseling center and a preschool and a child, and the list goes on. And when we think about things like the Rethink I-65, I-70, or kind of how your work around kind of neighborhood displacement and gentrification and all those issues, it's not just, when a church is lost, far more than just a congregation suffers.
Huge ripple effects of that. Yeah.
Okay, lightning round.
Okay.
All right. These are 5 quick questions. I'm going to ask you to give the first answer that comes to mind, and I'm going to give the disclaimer that I've always been on this side of this exercise until a couple of weeks ago, and then I discovered that I utterly failed at being on the other side of it. So if the answers go a little long, that's okay too. What's your favorite Indianapolis neighborhood?
Favorite Indianapolis neighborhood? Riverside. Resident in Riverside for the past 5 years. It's growing. I grew up on the north side, but the way the investments in the city have impacted that, my neighborhood have been great. Really looking forward to continuing to develop in relationships out there.
One book you think every young leader should be required to read?
I just knew you were going to ask this. I can't remember the author's title. I read it earlier this year, but it's called The Courage to be Disliked. It talks about really the importance of really honing in on who you are and making decisive decisions. I really wish I could remember the author now, but a great book, and I'll send you the title.
Yes. Who's the most underrated civic leader in Indianapolis right now?
Oh, that is.
Are you allowed to answer that one?
The most underrated civic leader in Indianapolis. I'm going to lean on a younger person.
Yes.
All respect to all the elected officials in the city. Don't be mad at me, but one of the most underrated folks that I see is a guy named Anthony Murdoch. I think I brought him up when we were off camera. I think he's doing incredible work around entrepreneurs in the city, not only helping younger folks, but helping folks like me navigate messaging in a very thoughtful way. I think he is hands down one of the greatest storytellers in America. Very honest, very thoughtful, very grounded, and someone that certainly deserves his flowers.
Other than your beloved neighborhood of Riverside, where do you go when you need to recharge in our city?
Where do I go? These are two kind of conflicting things. Okay. And again, I know I'm with the pastor, but I'm going to say it. So one is Fairbanks Park. So I've got, I also journal throughout the day at various points, but there's various seating spaces around the pond or lake, and that's a place where I always go. But then the other one, there is, for the past 18 years, there has been Tuesday nights at Coach's Tavern downtown. Guy named Nick Saligo, who is DJ Metronome. They do old school hip hop. So from 10:30 to about 2 a.m., and I'm not there till 2 a.m. most nights. They play the music that I grew up on, and for a kid who grew up listening to 90s hip hop and R&B, that got really involved in the blog era of hip hop, was actually a writer for that. During that moment, it is a place where, while there is a lot going on in that environment, it has been also a constant for me where, on really tough days, going and hearing, your favorite DJ playing B-sides from Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt, it's not a bad thing. So those are two things that kind of help me recharge in a very
wonderful
real way.
Balance, those two, I would say.
Yeah. Righteous and what I call righteous and ratchet, even though it's not that ratchet, but
I didn't know there was a 2 o'clock in the morning. That's good information to get.
We'll get you out there one night.
One mentor who you would love to have 10 minutes with.
one mentor I would love to have 10 minutes with. Again, that's also going to get me in trouble.
I'll take the blame. I said just one.
Gotcha. Nicole Wilson. She has been a friend and mentor for a number of years. I think she's now at IU Health in an executive level role, but for whatever reason, important to me early on. We connected through #lunchbag, and throughout various moments of my career, she shows up in a very real way. Really grateful for her, and also her husband Corey. They played an incredible role for a number of younger Black leaders and doers and thinkers in this city, and the work they do is incredibly important. But whenever I get time with Nicole, it's always helpful and it keeps me sharp and thoughtful. So she would be somebody that I'd certainly mention there. Yeah. And I don't think that one's going to get me in trouble.
A safe bet.
Yeah.
Last question. What's giving you hope right now?
What's giving me hope? Younger people, always. So I mentioned Indy Hub. I mentioned the Mitch Daniels Leadership Foundation. For 4 years, I had the privilege of being the moderator for 1828, which is Indy Hub's leadership development program, and seeing people not only focused on their careers, but focused on family, focused on building families was incredibly important. So, the younger people in this city, I think it's important for some of us old folks to get out their way, to empower them as much as we can. But certainly the younger folks in this city give me a great amount of hope.
Rick Stowers, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Grateful not only for what I think has been a really valuable conversation, but also for the work you're doing in our city, especially that work of building bridges and getting others involved and refusing to let cynicism win. So thank you for your hopeful
It's a battle
outlook.
some days, but yeah. But thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation and you and your team for connecting us.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Friends, this has been Faithful Discourse. If Greg's work inspired you, go find a way to serve your city this week. You can volunteer, show up, connect. And if you want to support this podcast, head over to our website and share this episode or subscribe yourself. Until next time, may we find ways to live with courage, love, and justice in our own communities.